someone suggested I should play the long and arduous road in HOI4 TNO, which is basically a sub-mod that upgrades the Chinese path. As the muddled lands of China awakens from decades of confusion, opening her eyes once more, she inspects the world and herself. The chains of the rising sun bind her limbs, but not for long. We're obviously playing as the Republic of China. Why is everything Chinese? I installed the translation submod as well. I had to install so many submods just to make this work. Hopefully, it's properly translated. China, one of my favorite focuses in TNO. One of my favorite nations to play as in HOI4 in general. I'm excited to see what they've added. We start off with the regular focus, I think. There look to be some slight tweaks in here, I think, in the military affairs. But that's for the future. We have to start off with education. The first of the modernizations. And build a beautiful future for China. And we're lacking everything, goddamn. Well, let's start off with hospitals maybe, eh? I think we'll probably need a lot of them. Look at the sheer amount of states. Was this always like this? I feel like just by TNO adding a lot of it, China seems even bigger. There is even a difficulty customization. I will leave it be for now. There's so much to do for us. Due to our military activities remaining covered, the suspicion level will remain unchanged at the end of this month. Okay, let's get started. We've got our work cut out for us. The history of China is a complex one, perhaps the most ancient civilization known to man. China has both dominated and been held under the boot. As the moon waxes and wanes, so does China, and currently the nation has suffered under decades of embarrassment, the so-called century of humiliation. But as rebels seized Nanjing and the Qing dynasty came to its end, hope abounded. Hope for a new republican state where the Han controlled China. The liberties and vices of the Roaring Twenties came to a sudden stop with the coordinated Japanese invasion. Two giants of China, Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, died together as they fought against the Japanese menace in the ruins of Chongqing. Former Kuomintang loyalist turned Japanese collaborator Wang Jingwei began negotiations with the Japanese, but found out they had no other intentions but to make China a colony. Wang Jingwei resigned to his fate and died, knowing that he had betrayed his country and ushered in another era of humiliation. The majority of China still begrudgingly supports the Japanese regime, even if it weren't granted national self-determination. The Japanese have kept China from falling back into anarchy of 2 decades prior, while warlords still run rampant on the peripheries. We remain shackled to the Japanese yoke in countless ways, but I believe that An can save the world. All was not hopeless, however. A new generation of Chinese, too young to remember the war, strove for a revived spirit. Old lackeys friendly to the Japanese still held the greatest influence, but as a power vacuum formed, they looked towards Gao Zhongwu, a diplomat during the war, a weak candidate. What neither faction knew was that Gao, a cautious individual, intended to make use of his time in office. He had great plans for Zhongguo, the nation rising from the ashes. We need to modernize through 5 steps to become equals or maybe even superiors against China. Well, not against China, against Japan. A little bit of a Freudian slip right there. And the next mechanic, the Sacred Army. The siege of Chongqing ended with the Republic of China and brought about extreme restrictions on the Chinese military, backed by Japanese power. These restrictions have not yet been lifted, yet the Japanese have seen fit to gradually pull out of China, leaving our poorly trained, poorly equipped garrisons to handle the many insurgencies that have now cropped up across the country. We'll begin the remilitarization of China through the Secret Army to deceive Japan's sight. That's this right here. The time required to complete a secret army task is dependent on the NSB effectiveness. Okay, right now we're not very effective, but I want to fund weapon development right away. Modernization, the great project of modern China, is a risky one. The Japanese will try to undermine our very move once they realize our ambitions, especially the ambitions that require more autonomy for the legitimate Chinese state. Which is not to mention Gao Zhongwu's secret army, the creation of which can never be known by the foreign imperialists, lest our efforts become undone by the Imperial Army. The outbreak of the Cold War and efforts made by Chinese officials have forced the Japanese to retreat all army units from our territory, aside from the Northwestern Pacification Army. Okay, we will have to navigate our way pretty much. To combat mass illiteracy and its consequences on the efficiency of the government, Zhongwu has issued a general reform of the education system, promising sweeping changes to the country's attitude towards literacy. Gao's offensive against the pathetic educational system comes in three-pronged attacks. Firstly, the people must read. Increasing literacy sounds simple enough, but with such a massive and widely dispersed population, ensuring that everyone can read is no easy feat. To ensure the next generation of Chinese students receive the best education, the reform proposal also calls for hosting intellectuals from Japan. And finally, once students meet the bare minimum of reading and writing, as taught by highly qualified Japanese teachers, we will grant them a revitalized and modern curriculum. Well, we'll see how well that goes, huh? We'll see how well that goes. Let's start with their literacy programs. Whenever anyone in the neighborhood mentions Old Lee, the one who runs the corner store, no one has anything but a good word for him. 10 or so years ago, everyone saw him arrive covered in dust and grime. The next day, he went door to door and greeted every single one of his new neighbors pleasantly, saying that he had just come from Chongqing in an accent that sounded nothing like Sichuanese. Of course, his neighbors took a shine to him, and he carved out a little life for himself in Wuhan's Hanyang Township. Lee had an energetic style of living. Soon after his arrival, he brought a small storefront near his home and made a living selling decent groceries. He had even made a name for himself, occasionally selling rare knickknacks no one had ever seen. Word on the street was that he'd outdrank a couple guys he's close to, as brothers would now. They help him with moving goods and always have a drink together after the work's done. He would always display a copy of the Classic of Changes in the store, and that made him the butt of some jokes told around the drinking table. But he'd always decline any offers, saying that he didn't actually know how to do divination. The book was just for fun. One in a while, though, when he was alone, he would open up the book to the page with the 8 trigrams, and, most inexplicably, his tears would begin to fall. As they did, his fingers would trace his tears on the sheet. And in a handwriting that looked decidedly non-Chinese, he'd spell out Li Nanshan. Li also habitually walked around in the Han River. At first, some people tried waiting for him to get back to the store. They gave up soon after they saw Lee coming back in the small hours of the morning and realized that he was, in fact, gone for the whole day. Every time someone asked where he was from, Lee would always say only that his family moved to Sichuan in the first year of the Republic and that he grew up there. Anything else, he adamantly refused to disclose, no matter how insistent someone was asking. Is he Japanese or something? Oh, he's from Korea! 1 year, 2, 3, 10, 12 and on, Old Lee naturally became an irreplaceable member of his township. Yet Lee's first name was not actually Lee. Nobody knew that he was born in Seoul. Nobody knew that, at the age of 9, he went with his parents to a rally, listened to the fiery orators, and shouted alongside millions of others, "Long live independence." He eventually joined the provisional government of the Republic of Korea, which then moved to Chongqing alongside the nationalist government. President Kim Il-sung had established the Korean Liberation Army, arming itself to fight the Japanese that held their homeland in bondage. Lee enlisted, for he hated the Japanese to his core, but when Chongqing itself fell, and he lost contact with all his comrades amidst the collapse of the provisional government, he fled once again. But this time, where to? He had to lay low. Sometimes, as he lay awake in the dead of the night, he would recall a dimming memory of Seoul, remembering how he had gazed from atop Namsan Mountains at the rushing Han River, how he longed for his beloved homeland, how he missed his lost family. Sometimes, when his heartache became unbearable, he would take out from his trunk a faded yet spotless taegukgi. The words 10,000 years to independence Korea was written on it in blood, and silently weep. He was turning 52 this year. He had not much of his life left, that he knew. What he did not know was whether he would ever see his own one again, alive or in a casket. Oh, we might be able to get Korea independent. We're also establishing some new literary reforms, which are very promising apparently. Academic-based monthly change. Yes. We're only 1 month into the campaign. You know what? Fund weapons development again, huh? Why not? We have a yearly deficit, actually. We save some money to help pay off our debts. That's great. Let's for now do some military austerity as well. In the Zhongwu cabinet, there is a particularly sturdy rumor. It speaks of a great national project, one to define China for decades. There's not, however, some great monumental building. nor is it some meandering road or railway. It is something far greater than all of those. A project of modernization. We will innovate the very fire of China. By making the language more accessible to everyone, we will make sure that everyone will be able to read and thus become more rebellious. Let's invite some Japanese intellectuals, huh? I would like to study the art of the blade, or something like that. I don't know, man. Opportunity to port Dalian, which is, I'm guessing, this one, right? The ships arrived along the shore, carrying with them our hopes and dreams of a renewed China. Teachers, by the thousands. Oh, hell yeah. The Chinese economic report to inflate the numbers is for our own good. Do we really care? Sure. It's my turn to play Wei. You're a big idiot. Kaito adjusted her glasses nervously as she flicked through the ginormous stack of papers plopped upon her desk. Kaito loved teaching. It is what she was born to do, and she wanted to do something good for those who need it most. Combining her aspirations and moving to rural China seemed like the obvious answer. Her idealistic passion may have clouded her judgment. This is not what she had envisioned. Kaito had been brought back to reality from a nightmarish screech from the back of the class. Liu hit me, Mrs. Teacher. Liu hit me. Now, everyone. We're all friends here. Would you look at the time? I think it's time that we learned each other's names. Why don't you go first, young lady? Slowly and shakily, something that resembled Wei began to take shape on the chalkboard. When she was done, a course of my turn, I can do it better, erupted from the classroom. Hell yeah. Teach them. Let's get some organization of the curriculum as well, right? We get 2.5 increase in our modernization, which isn't much because we need to level this up 6 times. And so it happened to become an impossibility to live under the shadow of the mountains and the gaze of the chairman. It had all begun one afternoon, a day of rest. See, for the communists, the long march never ended. It had paused during the war, but then it had continued, an endless exodus into a nation, so large that the plains and mountains and forests went on for days. Their enemies were many and great, and the distances greater. They had fallen asleep in the middle of the day, exhausted from each and every trek. One snuck into the food stores for a meal and fell to his knees. It was all gone, save for a few crumbs. Even this was not enough to destroy the holdouts. They had braved worse. The tragedy that followed boded the true collapse. It was not supposed to come to an end like this. Each one had envisioned a bold end, fighting to the death in the lands that they loved. So when the man went to bed hungry and depressed with his comrades, they were not expecting an attack in the rudest of times. The police were first. 2 villagers out hunting had seen a camp being set up and reported it to the local officers. And this is what became of those who slept under the gaze of Mao. Kuomintang spies in our government. Let's go in here. We'll also get extra political power gain, which, you know, we definitely need. Zhen woke up to the sound of gunfire, yet he barely stirred. Hung was on watch today, and Noah was shooting targets. Breakfast was being made, and judging by the gluttonous smell in the air, it was sticky rice. Stores were running low, and today was raid day. That could wait. This was the one day Zhen was given the privilege of sleeping in. An old radio played some Chinese songs from before the war, and he wished he could go back to sleep to those melodies. But once Zhen awoke, he was unable to go back to sleep. There's no point in tossing and turning in his cot. They watched from the hill, villagers going about their daily lives. The homes were wood and dirt, half collapsing. A cement building in the center had a flag that stood still. There was no wind today. The big man strolled around, smiling and greeting residents, smartly dressed, with a pin of the flag of the false republic on his breast pocket. Bastard. There was something too confident about him. It was the first time he had ever felt anything like it, but Zhen had a nagging feeling in his heart. Courage, most likely. To his fellow raiders, he pointed to the food stores down the hill to the south. When each had given him an affirmative, they yelled some words that had lost meaning to each other a long time ago and charged. He was not surprised why the peasants called them the beasts of the mountains. They fit the picture. Dirty, clothes slathered, teeth bared. They were beasts, but beasts with a righteous cause. The villagers were still screaming, and there was still work to do. Quicker than he thought, his men emerged from the storehouse with panicked looks on their faces. He understood why there was no resistance. The storehouse went up in flames before his men could get out. Out of all the screams, it was only theirs that he could hear. There was no resistance because it was a trap. It was not courage or ferocity. It was fear. Whoops. It was early spring morning in April, where the sun had lightly brushed against the edges of the eastern horizon, when the dew still coated the stone grey steps that led to Dr. Sun's tomb. From the entrance gate to the very top, the bustle of nearby Nanjing had escaped the restless place of the nation's father. Everything was quiet, save for the chirping of birds and the rustling of the trees. There was not a single soul along the way. Cherry blossoms bloomed, a donation from the Japanese. The trees swayed as a gentle, warm spring wind breezed through the canopies. As he passed through the sacrificial hall, he thought of the phrase, "What is under heaven is for all," he thought to himself. What a generous, liberal-minded phrase. How so utterly naive, yet so enchantingly real. Gao looked at the ceiling, at the white sun set on a blue sky. Sometimes it was hard to believe that the Xinhai Revolution had only occurred 50 years ago. China had changed so much since then, for better or for worse. "Ah, Master Gao," a voice boomed within the hall's interior. I've been expecting you. "Master Liu, I see the tomb is spick and span, as clean as ever. Dr. Sun would have been proud. Please, Master Gao. Every time you visit Dr. Sun, you overwhelm me with the praises. I am only doing my work. Let the heavens attest." "Master Zhou and Zhang cannot come, I presume?" "No," Gao kept his smile. "They're too busy ensuring that Dr. Sun's legacy will survive in the future. Meanwhile, I'm too busy looking to the past to look forward to anything. How is your family? I understand that your son is entering university soon. Is there anything I can do to help?" Liu became bashful at the suggestion. "I would be very honored, but my son would have none of it. I may confide with you. He is a true Nanjing man, you see, and he still blames the government for what the Japanese did 20 years ago. It was awful, I agree. Still, the young ought not to reject the guidance of their elders. Have you spoken to him about this?" "Yes, but he would not change his view. Freedom is the greatest virtue of a nation," he says. "Freedom, the young do not truly understand the price of it." "Did you say anything, Master Gao?" "Nothing. Nothing at all. Expand our recruitment a little bit more, why don't we? Actually, we need to expand our training as well. We're getting 4% a month now. That's not bad, but it certainly could be improved. For the last 2 decades, Japan has played the role of a puppet master, pulling all the strings in Asia. After Japan's decisive victory over the Western powers, they emerged as an unmatched power on the world stage. When Chinese businessmen grow into this Japanese-dominated world without even basic knowledge of the language, they are unable to survive beyond the local level. Without the ability to communicate with the Zaibatsu and the Japanese economic and political institutions that dominate Asia, China is doomed to fail. We must learn Japanese for the greater good. At least for now. Eventually we'll make sure that they learn Chinese instead. The streets of Shanghai are dirty and undesirable. Beggars line every corner and cower under every sunroof. A week ago, anti-imperialist graffiti and obscene drawings were found sprinkled along the bottom of the Chinese Mitsubishi offices. As soon as these crude illustrations were found, authorities began to investigate. After raiding numerous homes in the slums, the police charged into a woman's home. The elderly woman, frightened, began to beat the men with sandals. While the officers endured the slight discomfort for a couple of minutes, they eventually knocked the woman out and found stacks of empty spray cans down the stairs beneath the ground floor. Also down the basement was a teenager cowering in the corner, shaking. After being shot with rubber bullets, the teenager was dragged out and forced to confess his crimes of disturbing peace. The liberal skank, the brat that he was, ratted out his accomplices, who were promptly arrested. A military tribune found him guilty and sentenced them to death for treason. The teenagers who had been rotting in the cell for days were finally brought to the gallows. One fainted, his knees buckled before stepping up to the rope. The soldiers present shot him in the head. The rest had the noose put around their necks. One of them, short and rat-faced, had the nerve to make his last words. "Fuck the emperor." Finally, as the stool was pulled underneath the final perpetrator, he screamed, in a final moment of defiance, "Long live Chiang Shikai." We will never know his final words. Will we really not? Come on. Who else could it have been? The Coca-Cola incident? What do you mean? For decades now, there has been a national reawakening in America. A shift in the American interest. Not in a god or a culture or ideology, but something more simple. Oh, Coca-Cola pretty much became a thing. We will not allow American products on our soil. Whatever you say, brother. Shiming ate his rice in silence. Rain was coming. The clouds danced swiftly across the sky. Putting down his bowl, he got back to work. His break was over. Picking up his tools and pulling up from the bottom of his pants, he trudged back into the field. She rarely left the farm unless he was grabbing groceries in town. He was born, raised, and lived in the fields. It might be boring, but his family had done it for generations. There was no sign that it would ever change. The fields were Xi's home, and like any home, they offered security, albeit a dull one. The boy was walking back to his hut when his parents yelled for him to come quick. Running with a rake in his right hand and his box for lunch in his left, he pushed open the door to see his parents sitting with an unfamiliar man. She was instantly concerned. Had a relative passed away? Were the Japanese finally here to snatch away his parents? Hello, Xi. Your parents and I were just talking about a new school opening in town. Nice. We will become educated, or else. Well, or else we pretty much just die. This will improve NSB effectiveness. Let's put 50 in, eh? And it will be decayed by 0. Actually, never mind. You see, this is worsening somehow. I thought it wasn't supposed to be. I guess everything declines. That's fine. That's fine. Nationalism is learning. Okay. If you say so, buddy. She woke up to a dawning morning. Today was the first day of school, and like any other boy and girl in China, he was nervous. The regular anxiety of a simple boy was only magnified by the sudden need for education. He would much prefer to just stay with his family. However, she dreamed of a larger world. Sometimes he daydreamed of the world beyond his town. The trip was long. The nearest school was 40 kilometers away. Luckily, Xi's parents were not the ones to give in and skip out on the new education reforms. Xi Ming, whether he liked it or not, would be the first to read in his family since time immemorial. The village rose into view, and she let out a sigh. He was finally here. The town was just waking up. Somewhere a rooster crowed. A man walked along the dirt road, ringing a bell and waking up any stragglers. Stopping his flying pigeon, she asked a sleepy village person where the school was. The man pointed towards down the street, to the old recreational hall. The dingy gymnasium had gone unused for many years. The imprints of the 12-pointed sun, long gone, still left their mark on the wall. She was early. He didn't know how to read a clock, but the lack of both teachers and students was a dead giveaway. As the sun finally finished its daily transit over the horizon, the town quickly became alive. In no time, students, both eager and miserable, funneled into the makeshift school, and teachers rolled in supplies and carts full of textbooks. Is this cool? We'll see, brother. Who knows, man? We're getting towards the halfway mark for our first educational modernization progress. The teacher was originally from outside Nanjing, born during the war. Her mother was killed during the Nanjing incident, and while she didn't remember her, she certainly noticed the lack of mother in her life. Both she and her lonely father fervently hated the Japanese. By the time she had pursued a career in teaching, Chinese calls for teachers out west had already been put out. She reported eagerly. The frontier seemed to call her in all its romantic glory. An old automobile drove her into the village, the sort that dotted China, a fish in the biggest sea of the world. Today she would get settled in her new house, a little apartment complex set up for teachers. It must have been the first building built in the last 50 years. What the hell have I got myself into? Our GDP increased by 3%. That's 1.2 billion. Damn, that's great. Definitely go for that. Teaching a bunch of ratty tweens and teenagers how to read was challenging, but it was a challenge she was willing to undertake. Dragging the chalk on the chalkboard and squeaking out her name, Li Zhao, she sighed at the task ahead of her, reciting her name and making sure each student knew. She began the task she was here to do, teach. By the middle of the day, Li had already spotted her favorite students. There were those who had an innate love of learning, and there were those who lacked that love. Li made sure to remind herself that these were to be the future of China and all deserved to be taught the same. More importantly, they were to be the ones who would hopefully put an end to the Japanese stranglehold. It is improper and certainly illegal for her to share her true beliefs with the students, but deep down she hoped that her teachings would prepare the generation that would unhinge the Yamato's grip. It's 1963 now. We've gone through a whole year. A lot of events so far, but I feel like we're just getting started. China had been an investment. It was an investment the Empire of Japan had paid for with blood, toil, and treasure. It left millions of her sons dead, and though she had emerged the victor, The years since had shown that the nature of that victory was a slow strangulation with the laurels. Ibuka Masaru had grappled with the question of how to turn the black hole that was China into an opportunity to finally begin reaping the returns that would come long ago. That should have come long ago, and of course, for Fujitsu to take first picks. It was this mindset that he looked into the sunken face of Gao Zhongwu, the president of China. He listened about how Nanjing could barely communicate with massive city centers like Chongqing, despite how important they were for tax collection and policing. He heard about how the center received reports of bandit attacks and unsurrendered soldiers. In his engineer's mind, one thing became clearer and clearer. This was not a question of legitimacy or force of arms. Those things were important, but secondary. No, this was simply a matter of communications. And that is exactly what Fujitsu dealt with. Ibuka Masaru glanced at the interpreter and began. I trust you are aware of what a computer is, Mr. President. What the fuck is that? But I guess we'll see soon. And we're still atrocious at research. We only have 3 research slots as well. She rode his flying pigeon back to school. It had become part of his daily routine, and he relished the solitude and exercise it brought. He would hum tunes on his way. The daily biking had made him fit, more fit than his arduous work on the field. He had found friends at schools, people who thought and talked like him. He fit in at school. More importantly, he was learning. She caught on quickly to reading and excelled far more than other students. His teacher was determined to teach, and she taught well. In time, the students would learn to read, and the teachers would grow gray. Across China, the illiterate turned into the literate. Education was the talk of policymakers in the capital. The Japanese secretly admired the grand modernization of the schools of China. Somewhere in a sleepy town in western China, the light of knowledge burned bright. Oh, educational progress gain increased by 1.5. We definitely need to get to there. I think after great minds we'll go towards teaching art, evolution of culture, and then Chinese scholarship. Credit rating has also improved. Nice. Let's do some more military austerity again. Yep, there we go. Uh-oh, Yasuda crisis. Japan collapsed economically, though that might be an opportunity for us. The Philippines is also collapsing. Who knows if Japan gets to keep that? Kinda hope they don't. A weak Japan would be great for us. This Chinese scholarship. Maybe I need to do some civilian austerity as well, huh? There we go. We get a yearly surplus of 80 million, which we'll definitely need, considering our social funding will sharply rise to pay for all of this education that I'll be doing. We're close to our first level. I think after this ticks over, we'll get our first modernization progress. Greetings, Mr. President. The colorful banner hung across the entrance of the decrepit school, adorned with children's drawings of the national flag among the field of flowers. The previous school had welcomed him as President Gao Hongshu. As he ascended the makeshift stairs, Gao was careful to avoid the cracks in the aging wood. An elderly gentleman who introduced himself as Mr. Shui Fang gave an impassioned introduction to the children. Kids, as you know, we are in the presence of a tremendous man, a leader who is pulling China out of the rut it has found itself in. Why doesn't everyone say hello to the most esteemed president? The crowd responded merrily with a chorus of greetings. Gao couldn't help himself. A real smile had begun to form. Maybe things weren't so bad after all. Any hope of a successful visit died as soon as he stepped into the building. The smell hit him first, then the pipes dripping water, then the hole in the ceiling. Gao dropped his head and let out a defeated sigh. There's still much work to be done, obviously. He made a mental note to add special guidances for maintaining the property. Finally, after all was said and done, Gao returned to his limousine and went over the shortcomings of the school. He drafted a list of guidelines for all schools to meet. Chiefly was sanitation, but below it was providing reasonable transport, convenience, quality education, instilling patriotism, and having properly educated teachers. A potential crisis averted. Well, we'll see about that. Oh, this is gonna be expensive, huh? Well, we don't have much of a choice. That surplus that we were rocking for a while, we can say goodbye to that. It got up to 400 million, the surplus. We can increase our education efficiently. Of course, it's going to cost us a little bit of money. What do we get? What do we want? Emphasize the importance of natural sciences, maybe. Does this lower it? No, we're still at 6.5 monthly increase, so that's good at least. This is going to be so expensive. More than 2 billion in just these two focuses. We still have a yearly surplus of 80 million. But that's, by running with civilian and military cuts. Oh, now these ones are open finally. Okay, that's good. Maybe industrialization wouldn't be the worst, so we can improve our GDP a little bit more. All right, let's go. Yeah, let's go with industrialization because I think we are going to be bottlenecked soon with education. Our investments will pay off in the future. Yeah, of course. Pump in money, man. Oh, our deficit is not looking good. Income's, our debt's rising. Oh. GDP growth will increase by 0.1%. Yeah, I think I want to press all of these buttons. Divert funds towards construction. Yes. The Chinese state is one of the intense resource productions and of intense poverty. For years, the Japanese zaibatsu have stolen our resources in full view of corrupt politicians. Small Chinese resource extractors and contractors are bought up for measly sums, and monopolies are maintained with little to no oversight. All the resources are there for taking. The Chinese industries lack capabilities to effectively extract these resources and put them to good use. It is paramount that we begin the progress of It is of paramount importance to the progressing industrialization of China that we begin licensing and purchasing equipment from China in order to finally extract these materials that exist in our homeland. There we go. We seek the quality of the Japanese for now. I don't know if they'll give it to us though. They might give us garbage. And I can definitely see them do that. Yep. Expensive swindle. These tools were anything but, ranging from ball-peen hammers to old broken personal cameras. While our protests were raised instantly, the Japanese walked past us like we were a beggar on the streets. In typical Japanese fashion, they provided a curb bow, boarded the ship, and left with barely a word. Now we're left with nothing but some angry clients and broken equipment. And Adolf Hitler is dead. Oopsie doopsie. I think I want to conduct war games. Gives us bonuses to be used and trains up one of our leaders as well. Yeah, it seems like the entire world is collapsing. Burgundy declared war on the French state. German civil war, by the way. I wonder who's gonna win. Let's dig deep. Our new excavation projects will require 30 billion per year to maintain, a cost which we can reduce with the profits we gain from mining and selling mineral resources. Sure thing, buddy. We're just gonna debt spiral like true Chads. Oh, the Second Philippine Republic has persevered. They're staying in the co-prosperity sphere. Yeah, I forgot. I never played as the South Africans or Pitik or anyone like that. Maybe I should play as them one day. I wonder if they're actually interesting. We can get new income sources, yes. And the cost of maintaining our excavation projects will be reduced by $500 million. If the survey is successful, a new decision will be unlocked to exploit the surveyed resource deposit. Damn it, it seems that was unsuccessful. That's okay though. We'll figure something out. And we only make like 5 airplanes a year, that's nothing. How the hell are we supposed to stop Japan with that? These are garbage planes, by the way. Give me gold. No vein will be left untouched, indeed. But with that, I'm pretty sure that this is all the time I have left for today. We have started the long and arduous path towards getting China to become prosperous, to uniting all of the Chinese lands once again, and to kick out the Japanese back to where they belong. Narnia. But that will be for next time. So, hopefully you enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you did. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.